And welcome to this yoga class that will focus on low back. So if you have tension or pain in the low back, as long as you're not in the acute phase, I welcome you to join me for this class. You'll notice even now I'm sitting on a bolster, which is great for people with low back issues, as on the bolster, I'll turn to the side so you can see, you sit on the edge. It could be a pillow, doesn't have to be a bolster, blocks. Sit near the edge, and it tilts the pelvis in such a way that it tends to alleviate some tension into the lower back. A lot of people with low back pain or issues will have trouble sitting in any kind of yoga pose where we're in seated, right? So here we are. This is harder to maintain. I want to round through my low back. This bolster, just create some space. So if you're someone that struggles with low back, keep that in mind whenever you're practicing yoga to provide yourself with a little bit of support. Goes the same for Pilates seated poses as well. So for this practice today, you might have bolsters. You don't have to have anything fancy. You might have, a regular pillow. And then a blanket. And you could have a blanket folded as such so that it becomes quite short. So this is what, like a foot and a half, 2 feet, not quite long. Okay, so you have a long kind of bolster that could go along the spines. You've created one for yourself. Okay. Also, in addition to that, doesn't have to be a TheraBand. Just grab that today as an example. Could be a yoga strap, could be a scarf, anything that you have that's quite long. I do enjoy the TheraBand, though, also, and the what do you call this? Just this feeling, this feeling that you have with the TheraBand. So we will start off on our backs with some of those pillows nearby, whatever you're using as a strap nearby. Let's start with the knees bent. Quite often, again, this can alleviate tension in the low back. You might do this automatically in your yoga practice. And take some breath here. And see if you can sense the exhale go into the lower back. If you can feel any movement there as you inhale and exhale. If you wish, you can even take your hands and place them in that small space. For some of us, it's a little smaller. Others, it's more of an arc, even when we're in neutral curves. And again, breathe. You can soften. Let the breath be long and slow. You keep your hands there or remove them as you sense the breath into the back of the ribs. Amazing how the breath can support the core and the back, the muscles, the abdominal muscles. We often think they're here, but they wrap around. Now the muscles in the trunk are connected and wrap to provide support along with the diaphragm, lung diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm, throat diaphragm. Now from here, we'll pull the knees into the chest as much as you're able and rock to massage the lower back. You could even have a blanket on the mat if this is too much. And then make some circles. The knees could be wide or narrow. You might need to make a little space for the low back. and reverse. Pause this action, lengthen the legs, and rebend. The hands can be behind the thighs to support this. Often the hamstrings are tight when we have low back tension. Next time you extend the legs, keep them there and roll through the ankles. Could do the same with the wrists if you feel comfortable releasing the hands. Reverse. From here, bend the knees back and hug them toward the chest. Then bring the legs wide and rock this way. The legs are very wide now, this relaxed, happy baby. Inhale. Next, I'll stick the tongue out. And then plant the feet back on the earth. Now, imagine your pelvis is a bowl and there's soup in your bowl. And I'd like you to rock or slosh the soup side to side. So one side of the pelvis will ground and the other lightens a little, and then switch that to the other side. So you're rocking side to side. And on your kneecaps are rubber bands that go toward the ceiling. So as much as possible, the knees are pointed upright. This action comes from the pelvis, not the knees. It will move a little, but I'm trying to keep them relatively stable. And now from here, see if you can tilt the pelvis toward you or slosh the soup toward your ribs. And then away toward the pubic bone. And wave it toward the hips or toward the ribs and away. You might notice as you do this a reciprocal action of the head. The head might slightly also move. I sense that. Never do this if there's pain, smaller range of motion, or perhaps this just isn't for you at this time. And pause. And we'll make circles of the pelvis. So you want that soup to swirl around the bowl. Feel the lower back as different points heavy and lighten. I picture a whirlpool here. Breathe deep. Notice if there's anywhere along the circle where there's a stuck point, or if this action is frustrating. Pause, inhale, and exhale to go the opposite way. We often go the way that's easier, so this might be harder. This is harder for me. Really sense here. The low back. Send the breath there. And pause again. Rock the pelvis away from you. So creating a bit of space in the low back, and then imprint the spine or plant it down and begin to peel through the sacrum and through the low back. Go really slow here as you begin to rise until you're just lightly on the lower ribs. And see if the chest can come down first. And then roll down through the spine, noticing how that low back feels. Again, roll into your bridge and lift and come back down. Let's do 2 more, depending on your pace. Could be 1, right? It's your practice. I like to inhale at the top and exhale to lower. We have a tendency to rush this. It's kind of natural to do that, but see how slow you can go. And lower back down. I've decided we're going to add on a little bit here. So let's curl up again, a little faster. And stay here. Did this the other day, but it feels so good. Let the ribs flare a little bit. So the low ribs are lifting off the earth. And then slide them toward the pelvis. So you're drawing them in a little. And let them flare. I'll exaggerate here. And draw them in. Let them flare. And draw them in. Most of the time in yoga, flare and draw. We want them to be drawn in. More time, just feel the breath into the ribs. And then draw and lower, lower, lower. Let's take the band or strap, whatever you've got, around the sole of the right foot. Hopefully it's long enough that your upper arms can relax on the earth, shoulders melt. And from here, allow the leg to come away from you and toward you. So start with a little mobility, and then we'll really get into the stretch. The strap, this is nice. There's a little bit of work here, a little bit of resistance. I did a class with these not long ago for my Pilates training, and we did a lot with this kind of motion. And there were people that said they can never touch the floor, and when they were done, they could touch the floor. Not saying that will necessarily happen to you, but you never know. Let's do 1 more. And draw the toes toward the nose. Use the strap and or band as you wish. Only go as far as is comfortable. Micro bend in that leg. We'll take only 3 to 5 breaths here, quite long breaths. You'll notice my other foot is planted. It could be long, but that's challenging for low back. So if you ever see in a class, everyone doing this, you can do this. And while we're here, the reason I had you do that rib thing is to get kind of some mobility going through the upper spine, because we're often congested in that area, and that can contribute to lower back, and we'll get into that. More inhale, and then exhale to remove the strap from that foot. Perhaps bend the knee into the chest 1 time and lengthen the leg out as the arms come overhead. Flex through that right foot. And then glide the heel in. Let's try the opposite side. Nothing fancy here. Hopefully we'll feel really good by the time we're done. So foot and strap. Work together here as we lengthen the leg and pull it in. Nice and slow and controlled hip motion here. The pelvis is stable. Inhale and exhale. 2 more. Last one away. And bring it toward the nose. And we'll pause again. Really press the sole of that foot into the strap, while at the same time you anchor the hips. Working a lot with the back line today, obviously. But not only will we stretch into the lower back, but the thoracic spine. There's lack of mobility and strength also there. The low back tends to take the load. Inhale. Exhale. One more inhale. And exhale to remove that strap or whatever you've got. Hug that knee in. Lengthen the leg out. Arms might reach overhead. As long as that's not too much. Always have them at your sides too. And slide that heel in. And plant the foot. Let's work a little bit with the scapulas, so the shoulder blades. Again, mobility. Lengthen the arms, fingertips toward the sky, and reach them away. And then ground the back of the shoulders. Reach away and pull them in. Just so we can feel this movement versus spinal movement. More inhale. And exhale those shoulders back, down. One long body stretch if able. Before we roll onto one side. Use the support of your top hand to press yourself up. And from here, we will come to seated. So this is where you might use some sort of prop, blanket, small bolster pillow underneath the pelvis to bring the hips to it. And from here, let's plant the feet for now and take the hands to the backs of the legs and see if you can just lift through the heart as if you had a string, lift it to the sky. And then bring yourself back to neutral. So we're trying to move through the thoracic spine here. Lift a little and bring it back. And see if you can still glide the ribs slightly toward the pelvis while you do this. It'll make it harder. You'll notice I'm not moving a lot. And when I'm talking about thoracic or upper spine, it's kind of up, up this way, right? Where the ribs are. Just a few like this. Three. I like to inhale as I arc. Exhale as I come back. 2. Upper spine mobility here. 1 more. And bring it back to center. This is where we're going to open up that area even more. That was just preparation for that. You might take that blanket that you've got and have it running the same length as your spine. Or you could just have a pillow under that entire thoracic or rib area, especially upper ribs. And then with the knees bent, you can come down onto it. So again, those ribs and shoulders land on it. And this isn't very high, but it is a chest opener. Sometimes we get really congested in here. Start to curve in onto ourselves. I'm going to use something higher. And as for the legs, It could stay bent. Some people might even naturally, you may have already done this, open the knees like a book, soles of feet together. They're also getting in, opening through the inseams of the legs. Cobblers. If you have that whole kind of rectangular pillow, let's say, or not rectangular, square pillow underneath that upper spine, you might even have the head on the earth. The head could be lower than the heart. That can be very soothing for the nervous system, as long as the neck is healthy. We'll stay here a little while. You breathe into that heart space now. Play with the arms. Make sure they're in a position where you feel that broadness across the collarbones. Two more breaths. Maybe exhale through the mouth. And if the legs are open, take the hands to close them back up. Roll over to one side. It's a very safe way to rise. You're using the top hand to press up. Rather than rolling up and down the spine, if you have something like degenerative disc, then you probably want to stay away from that. Okay. Next, let's come into tabletop for just a moment. And round the spine and stay there. Feel the constriction that might arise with the inhale. And see if you can take, it's for you, take the pelvis around as if tracing again a bowl. Trace the inside of that bowl or barrel with your pelvis. Notice if there's any stuck points here. It's like we did when we were on our back with that pelvic clock. And reverse. This could be a very small range of motion for you. You might even just have already gone into regular cat-cow. You know your body. And then pause in stillness. Again, I've been doing this a lot lately, but it's so important. Try to keep the low back still. There's this little squeeze or hug of the inner thighs toward one another. And see if you can keep, again, that low back stable and just try to move through the thoracic spine. Little arc and come back to neutral. A little arc and come back to neutral. It won't look like you're doing a lot and it might feel frustrating. Again, we want to open up this area, want to strengthen it so that the low back doesn't take the load too much in all of those cobras, sphinx, up dogs. It's often in those poses where people feel congestion in the low back. So we come up too high, just using the low back rather than this area here that I'm trying to use. One more. And then pause. We're going to sit onto that bolster blanket, whatever you've got. Because I go for something lower. Blanket's probably good. And sit back down. Extend whichever leg you want, could be the right leg. out long. This is where you might want a stack of bolsters on your lap so that you can round and fold forward with some support. So you could have a bunch of pillows here, you could have stacked fists. This will bring it more into the back. Usually, if we have a tall spine, we're bringing it more into the hamstrings. Okay. So we've already stretched the hamstrings once, we're stretching them again. You'll notice my foot is flexed, but the knee is not hyperextended, just micro bend there. Breathe into the low back. More inhale and exhale to roll up through the spine. Let's take both legs out, just the width of the mat. Hands out in front, inhale. And exhale, see if you can pretend a bowling ball is like hitting you in the stomach. Oh, and you're coming back and up. And draw the belly in. And come back to neutral. Again, one more. And back to neutral. Let's switch legs. So if you did the right, the left leg stays extended. Right sole of foot comes to the inseam of the long leg as we lengthen through the spine and decide how far forward we'd like to come, long or rounded, somewhere in between. More inhale and exhale to roll up tall. Again, take that other leg and extend it and allow, if it's available to you, your body to come forward and soften the head. More inhale and exhale to roll yourself up. From here, remove that blanket and come onto your side. So open up that psoas and the front line a little bit more, not just the back line. So you can come in line with the front edge of your mat, take that top leg behind you, and the toes may or may not touch down. You might also need a pillow or something for the foot to land on. But we're looking for stretch in this area here, under the ribs, all the way into the front of the hip here. Arms extend. We get the sense of the lower waist lifting. And those of you that are tight in this area will know immediately. You can shift that leg forward and back. Ooh, there's a nice spot. Lift the bottom waist. This can be an issue with the low back, so I want to stretch a little bit. And then slide those legs in. Press through the top hand to come up, maybe into a mermaid. Clasp the hand around the shins. Other arm can reach. Come down onto that forearm. Other hand comes overhead. Clasp the shins again. Perhaps come over. Okay. Pause here and we'll come onto the opposite side. So swing the legs around. Sideline here. And then take the top leg back. And explore. It's one of my favorite things to do. One more inhale. As you exhale, stack those legs. Top hand supports you. Clasp the shin with that same hand as the side that the shins are on. Other arm will come overhead. And the forearm will come down. Side bend. And opposite side. And now we'll come on to our bellies. And this is where things might get a little more challenging. This may not be for everyone, depending on the state of your lower back. But this is where everyone comes up here or higher and puts a lot of strain on their lower back. We don't have the mobility and strength in the upper back. So we want this motion to be super, super small. So from here, press the tops of the feet into the earth. Active legs and a slight tuck of the tailbone. You can use the hands as a support. Try to lift the thoracic spine. So the head is not leading the way. It is the thoracic spine and lower. So gaze at the floor kind of in front of you, slightly in front. You can imagine there's a marble under the nose. You're pushing it away as you arc up just slightly and lower down. This is very small. If you feel this in your lower back, don't come up as high. And if you find this really challenging, that's an indicator that there's some mobility needed in that upper spine. Continue with this here. And we all also have different ranges of motion. Some of us also just have more space between our vertebrae, so we can come up higher. There's no better. But if it's really small and frustrating, there's probably some restriction there. One more time, come up. And down. If you're feeling the need to have a stretch in through the abdomen and you do think it's available, you could come onto the forearms. But again, imagine the sense of lift through the chest, really long legs as they press into the earth with that slight tuck. Might just stay down. And lower. From here, slide those hands in, press yourself back to a child's pose or onto your back with your knees and chest if this is too much for the knees. So here, wider legs first. That can make room for the lower back. And then you might want to explore a tighter child's pose. We often see this in restorative with the legs closer together and the arms coming back, only if it feels okay, but you might get a nice rounding here. Tuck the chin. Inhale. And exhale to roll up through the spine. And roll the shoulder. Tuck the chin. And look up. And tuck the chin. And look up. Head back to center. And again, we could sit on that little blanket. The legs cross, maybe the opposite way that you usually cross them. And again, another one of those side bends. And you could just stay here. Everything wraps. We want to get into this area too. Or you could, be careful with this one, rotate the torso slightly toward the earth. Really reach that arm out and away. Use the support of that bottom hand, lower scoop of the abdomen here, while you still try to breathe deep. Come back with the torso back to neutral facing me and come up tall. Other side. Pause here and see if you can keep opposite hip nice and grounded. If you're ready for it, that slight rotation toward the earth to get into kind of that side and the ribs there. Quadratus laborum, I think. That's what I'm feeling there. Nice. So many muscles in the back. So when we get hurt, everything's so interconnected. People with back pain know what I'm talking about. Everything hurts. Open up. Come back to center, and we'll switch the crossing of the legs and come over again to the first side, length before arc. And this time, maybe you take the hand behind the head and press the head into the hand. Really open up and breathe into that top side rib. Rotate a little bit. This might not be for everyone, right? Come out and close and open. Lengthen that arm out again and come up tall. Other side, arc over. Take hand behind head. Again, press into hand. Open up the armpit. And then rotate your torso slightly toward the earth, if this is okay, and open. And close a little. And open. Reach that arm. And again, sit up tall. We'll take a few breaths here for our savasana. With the low back issues, you might like to lie down. I enjoy seated, so I'll stay right here. A few more breaths. Fill yourself with air. Let it release naturally. Inhale and release. Take a wide inhale. And exhale to start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Maybe roll the wrists or wrists and ankles if lying down. Reverse. And come to a seated posture. of your choice, if not already there. Drop the chin, roll the head to one side, and pause. If you need the support, the other hand could come to the opposite side of the head. And roll the head the other way. Again, top hand could come to opposite side. Or even fingertips on the air. And drop the chin once more. Bring your head back to center. Thank you for practicing with me today. Sat Nam.